All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to PM Therapy Live. My name is Mukhtar, and I'm here with the awesome Jeff Sutherland. And I'm really excited about today's show because we're going to be speaking with the co creator of Scrum, and we're going to be talking about Agile as it is right now, where it's going to be headed. Yeah, without further ado, Jeff, welcome to the show. Jeff, for the few people that don't know who you are, please could you just introduce yourself briefly?
Okay, so I've had three careers. My first one was in the military. I was a fighter pilot. I learned about Agile. Surviving over North Vietnam required a lot of agility. And from there, I went back to school, taught at the Air Force Academy, got my PhD at the University of Colorado Medical School, then became a medical school professor for a decade or more. And that was really important because I was doing supercomputer research on modeling the human cell, simulating the human cell. So I had to learn about systems, how systems, particularly complex adaptive systems theory, works. We were trying to figure out what are the steps that cause cancer and then how do you reverse them. So it would take us a week to run one program. It would run for a week, and then we'd get the results. Next week, we'd run it again. It was so compute intensive. And because of that work, I was hired away by a big bank that was running 150 banks all over North America, and as their technology leader. And after I was there just a few weeks, I went to the CEO and I said, Ron, have you noticed all your projects are late? They ran these big COBOL projects with hundreds of people on them. And he says, yeah, he says, every morning, at least 5 of the CEOs or CIOs of the banks call me up and they scream at me. I said, well, it's not getting better. It's getting worse because every time you're late, you have more meetings, more reports, and it gets slower. So he said to me, what should I do? I said, well, at the medical school, I worked with Bell Labs. We know how to do Scrum. These guys invented the C language. They invented most of the technology we have, and they don't work like you do in the bank. So I said, why don't you give me the worst business unit in the bank, and I'll show you how to fix it. But you're going to have to let me set it up as a set of small, self-organizing teams collaborating towards a common goal, which is basically complex adaptive systems theory. And you and the management, you could be my board of directors. We'll meet once a month, but you don't mess with anybody in my business unit. And if you give me that, then I can make it work and we can go forward. So he said, okay, Jeff, it's going to be a big headache. It's not going to be as fun as just working on the new technology. I said, look, the bank needs to be fixed. Let's do it. So off we went. When we started, it was the unit that was losing the most money was the automated teller unit that we were rolling out to 150 banks all over North America, mostly in the U.S. and Canada.
Jeff, when you say automated teller, you mean ATMs?
ATMs, yeah, cash machines.
Gotcha. Okay.
And because it was a new technology, there was just a lot of headaches. And when I took over the business unit, I said, I need everybody, sales, marketing, support, the engineering people, finance, everything around that business unit, we're going to control and run as a self-organizing system. It's going to have burn down charts. It's going to have a product owner. It's going to have a sprint, a 1-week sprint. It's going to have deployment to 150 banks every sprint without fail or more often. This is back in 1983. This was a prototype of what today we call Scrum at scale in 1983. So that business unit, when we started, the revenue was 30% less than the cost. So negative 30% margin. Within 6 months, it was 30%. Revenue was 30% greater than the cost. So we got a 60% swing in margin, and it became the most profitable unit in the bank in 6 months. So that was the first implementation of what we now call today Scrum at Scale. And from there, I went through 11 different technology companies where I was the CEO or the CTO. We implemented Scrum in all of them. And in 1993, we were selling a product that they needed to use Scrum to use the product. And so we formalized Scrum. We got the name Scrum. And in 1993, we started selling a product and using Scrum with it. And we would guarantee that within the first month, they would double productivity or they got their money back. It was the only thing I know ever in the last 50 years of industry where someone said, you get your money back if you don't get double the results within 1 month.
Interesting.
And we never had to give anybody any money back. Because we had benchmarked Scrum using the leading software productivity research was the leading company in productivity. Capers Jones was a very famous guy, has written dozens of books on productivity, came out of large systems. And we had his team come in and benchmark what we were doing. And only when it ran 10 times as fast as normal development did we say, okay, this is ready for prime time.
Right.
So we were releasing to the market something that was 10 times as fast. And we know that no matter how bad they screwed it up, they would be twice as fast. And so that was the origin of Scrum. And in more recent years, people have started with Intel. They said, you need to write down, Jeff, what you do, because we're using these scaling frameworks and they're actually slowing us down at Intel. So write down what you've done, and that really works. And so we wrote it down and called it Scrum at Scale. But it's basically what I did in the bank in 1983.
Right. Jeff, a couple of questions. Just going back, I want to get to what happened at the bank, but just going back to your history, like you were an Air Force pilot, and then you became a medical school professor, and then you went to work in the bank. Like, I think to me, those seem like very disparate careers. Like, is there a through line? Like, what made you? I mean, that's some serious pivoting. Like, what made you go from one to the other? Like, these seem like very, very different fields.
Well, it started off because of my military experience. Like, not always when I was flying fighters, but during the latter part of the time I was in the military, I was the acting commander of the leading air defense base in the United States with the biggest nuclear weapons storage site. So I just had a lot of experience running stuff that was really intense. And so when the Air Force asked me to go back and teach at the Air Force Academy, and I started, getting my PhD at the nearest medical school because I was really interested in healthcare. My chairman of my department says, "Hey, I got this big grant. Why don't you leave the military and come run this big grant at the medical school for me?" So it was a grant. It was one of the big National Cancer Center grants. There was about the dozen biggest cancer centers in the United States all had these big grants for over 10 years. I had about $30 million to spend on my research and promoting cancer research in the state of Colorado. So it's all about leadership. It's all about delivery, and it's all about execution, right? So then the same thing happened with the bank. They said, "Hey, Jeff, you're running this big grant over there. You're using the latest technology. You guys are the experts, for the technology that we are interested in right now. You are the leading experts in the only guys that may know more than you are in Silicon Valley. We can't hire them, but why don't you come to the bank? We'll pay you whatever you want. The offer is twice your salary, and if you want more, just tell us." So it was really being pulled by execution and delivery and no nonsense, right? And so I get pulled from the military into running big grants and fixing the big bank. And that's been the story of my career.
Okay.
Problem, they call me, right?
Right. Okay. So people look at your experience in leadership, delivery, and execution in a previous domain, and are like, come do this in this new domain. So that's sort of what they see. That's the through line. Is that correct? I see.
Yeah. So, for example, later, in later years, my last years before creation of Scrum Inc., which now does this for everybody worldwide, my last two jobs were as CTO of one of the biggest healthcare software companies in the United States, and then a startup healthcare company. But that large healthcare company came to me and they said, Jeff, you need to come to work for us because we've been trying to hire a replacement for our founding CTO. He's been in the company for 30 years and we can't find anybody. We've looked at, dozens of candidates, but we know from your history and what you're doing now. I was CEO of a company that was doing, rapid deployment of object-oriented systems, stuff like that. They knew about all of it. They said, we know that you know what to do to fix what we've got. And they made me one offer I turned down. They came around, some months later and they said, hey, we need your help. And when I joined them, the stock price went up 6% the day my first day on the job. And they said that was the Sutherland effect.
Sorry, that was what?
6% of the valuation of the company.
Oh, wow.
And the stock continued to go up all the time I was there because I was introducing technology advances. The Gartner Group got really excited about the company. They said, wow, this old company that's been kind of sleepy is now leading the technology in healthcare. And so Gartner is publishing all of its reports and the stock price is going up. Okay, so
right.
It's all about delivery and driving business results. That's something a lot of Agile people don't understand. That was always from the beginning. Back when I was flying over North Vietnam, I was running the command post at night for the base commander. And we were, at nighttime, we were the leaders of the war over the North Vietnam. And I had to run that command post. So it's about getting stuff done in the middle of really bad things happening and making things work to deliver results. And that means, like in the case of Scrum Inc. working with a company like John Deere, they had implemented SAFe, a scaling framework, probably the most used scaling framework. They've been running it for 10 years, but their stock price was flat. So the board said to the management, SAFe is great. I mean, it's better than what we used to have, but if you can't make the stock price go up, maybe we need new management. So they came to us, Scrum Inc., and said, come on in and implement Scrum at scale, because they had done a little bit of work with us previously. In 1 year, we made the stock price go up 400%. And the way we did that is we went in and, the IT group, we said the IT group is slow, but they're not the problem. The problem is purchasing, supply chain management. And this was particularly coming into COVID, where it was getting even worse. We need to go in and implement Scrum at scale first in purchasing, contracting. And we made the backlog of that whole purchasing, contracting operation go 10 times as fast. And they delivered 15 times as many tractors and, other agricultural equipment. And then the stock price went up 400%. So that's what we mean by business value. Your stock price goes up. Your revenue goes up. Your market share goes up. Your profitability goes up. And it's not about Agile is just making developers happy. We do make developers happy. But if they don't deliver a lot more stuff, then the management isn't happy and the customer is furious and it doesn't work. And so one of the challenges you were mentioning earlier, there's a lot of people getting laid off in the Agile business these days. And these are the people that are not delivering results from the business's point of view. Okay. So for me, from the very beginning, I gave you the first implementation of Scrum at scale. What did it do for the bank? It took a business unit that was losing money and made it the most profitable business in the bank. That is the purpose of Agile. That is the purpose of Scrum. And anything less is going to get you unemployed in the age of AI.
A couple of things that I want to just really drive home. One thing that I really like that you mentioned is, despite your experience in multiple domains, I think the one thing that's consistent is delivery and driving business results, right? I know that one of the challenges that many PMs face is that they want to move to another industry, but they either they hesitate or they feel like they're not qualified enough because they don't have industry specific experience, right? But at the end of the day, one thing that's consistent across all industries is that it's delivery and business results and outcomes, right? That's if you can prove that you've done that in other places, I mean, there's a good chance that you will be hired in a new domain. So I just really wanted to drive that point home. One question I wanted to ask, just going back to the bank, you said the first time that, I guess the first implementation of Scrum, if I can call it that, was at the bank. Was there a precedent? Like, what made you feel confident that, okay, this is what I need to do? Like, did you have any prior experiences, or was there a precedent somewhere? Like, what made you feel confident that you needed to implement Scrum that very first time?
When you run the war over North Vietnam in the command post at night, and you run the Air Defense Command's largest nuclear installation, the bank is a minor problem. It's not that technically sophisticated. You're not worried about a nuclear bomb going off. It just needs to be fixed.
Right.
And fixing things, really coming out of that military background is that I worked with venture groups since 2005. I started working with Openview Venture Partners here in Boston, and they actually helped start up Scrum Inc. And they implemented Scrum in their whole operation. And we wrote a paper called "Take No Prisoners," because they just created the backlog, made a list of impediments, and any impediment that was blocking, they took it out. And whatever the top one, they took it out that week. And that meant if they had to change people, fire people, change processes, they did it now and not waiting. And coming out of the military background and fighter pilot background, that if you have a plane that's catching fire and you don't do something like now, you're going to be dead. Right? And so you have that gut level, that fire in the belly urgency of getting stuff done immediately before really bad things happen. So this works in any domain. You go into any company, you'll find they have processes that don't work.
Right.
You have people that are blocking progress. They'll have the wrong technology. It doesn't work. That needs to be fixed. So you set up a plan, just like, one of the reasons I said Gartner Group was writing about this big healthcare company. We set up a plan to change their technology systematically, with a several-year program. The plan was public, and we systematically moved down the path. And anything that was blocking, projects that need to be cut, they were cut. People that needed to be changed, they were changed. New people that need to be hired to make the new stuff work were hired. All of that was done aggressively, systematically, and in a way that made things really work, kept the stock price constantly going up, kept the customers constantly getting more happy. Those are the business results: more happy customers, more money, more revenue, more profitability. You're driving those results constantly. That's what every good industry leader does. That's what every good project management does, right? Project leader does. You're driving that project forward. You're delivering better results. You're delivering faster. It's making the company more money. The management's really happy with you, and you're getting promoted, right? That's what business is all about. And doing that aggressively is what Scrum is all about. And as soon as you get that reputation, like for your project managers that are listening, as soon as you get a reputation from delivering results, significant results consistently, people are going to come after you and try to hire you. You won't be looking for a job. The people will be looking for you, because for every project that, for every 10 projects this fails, there's only one guy out there that can actually fix it. I mean, the people that can really fix things are very rare. And for project managers, project leaders like the people that are watching this, you have to develop the talent to come in and really fix things fast, drive results. Those results need to drive profits and for the organization.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. By the way, for those of you that are listening, just leave a comment. If you have a question, drop a comment. Drop your questions in the comments, or even just say hello, like where you're calling in from. I see Matthew from NC. I believe that's North Carolina. Hi, Matthew. Olayinka. Hi, Prashant. Hi, Emmanuel from NG. Hi, and then LinkedIn user from Argentina. Hello. All right. So please just this is also a good way to meet other PMs in the industry or across industries. And if you are watching this on YouTube, just feel free to subscribe. If you're watching this on Substack, do subscribe as well. And on LinkedIn Live, just give this a thumbs up. All right. So now, just getting back to the show, Jeff. So we've had about 2 decades of I guess Agile right now. So how would you what would you say is the state of Agile right now? Like if you were to just paint a brief picture, we've had 2 decades of Agile. What's the state of Agile right now?
So we know the Standish Group was a company that published these chaos reports for years. They had a database of millions of projects. And what they clearly showed was 58% of Agile teams for the last decade or two are late, over budget, with unhappy customers. So 58% of what people call Agile is not Agile at all. It's anti-Agile.
Okay.
And that has been true for a decade or more. And I remember I had an Apple developer in one of my classes a few years ago, and she said, "Jeff, do you know why Apple always delivers on time?" I said, "No, why?" She says, because they do Scrum by the book. And of course, I was interested in what book. I said, "What book?" She said, "The red book, the one that's sitting behind me on the right. Scrum, the art of doing twice the work in half the time. It tells you exactly how to do Scrum, and Apple uses it exactly, and that's why they always deliver. But most companies, 90% of companies, can't compete with Apple. And if you look at what they're doing that they call Agile, it's not in the book. They're doing something other weird thing that they come up with that doesn't work, right?"
Can we double click on that, Jeff? So like, what are these anti-Agile things that are common that people are doing?
Well, for example, the Scrum Guide it's good, but it's really the Cliff Notes. you need to do the things in the Scrum Guide, but they will not make you go fast. What will make you go fast is the patterns that we wrote in the patterns book. And there are 8 of them that we call the hyperproductive patterns. And the most important one, we wrote a paper on this, most important one is teams that finish early accelerate faster. This comes from a huge data analysis from our venture capital group. The investors wanted to analyze thousands of sprints because they want all their companies doing Scrum. So they got data on thousands of sprints from their companies. And they tried to analyze that data, find out what makes the difference between an average team and a super productive team. And they could only find one data point that made a difference. Super productive teams finish the sprint early with everything done. Now, if you go into your Scrum in any of your companies, you'll find out that most of your teams, probably all your teams, are not getting everything done and closing it out before the end of the sprint.
Right. It's normally the opposite. Like a lot of times things spill over to the next sprint. Right?
Yeah, right. So that means they will never be a high-performing team. And then there's a series of patterns that support that. Okay, so for example, the next pattern you have to be careful of is you never take too much into a sprint. You use the metric we call yesterday's weather, the average of the amount of stuff you've taken in the last 3 sprints. If you take too much, you're not going to finish early. And if you don't finish early, you're going to suck forever. Okay, so you have to implement that pattern. The next one is not only can you not take too much, but you have to have a buffer for any unanticipated stuff that comes into the sprint, because that always happens. And for the average Scrum team, something unanticipated comes in. They say, oh, we can't do it. We don't know what to do. They have to do it. They get behind. So that doesn't work. Okay.
Right.
You have to have, another one is having a really good, clear backlog that's properly prioritized, because we have huge amounts of data, again, from big companies showing that if you have that, you go twice as fast. And so if you go in and you look at the backlog for a lot of companies, sometimes they don't even have one. If they have one, it's not clear.
Right.
I remember I was working with a subsidiary of Hewlett Packard. I went in, we helped boot up, they're creating new technology for kind of a competitor to the iPad. And they had 6-7 Scrum teams working on this. They're working pretty well. And one day they called me in. They said, hey, Jeff, you're in Silicon Valley. Stop by, because the last sprint or 2, our teams have just completely the production's been cut in half, They said, maybe it's summertime and everybody's going surfing, but come in and take a look. So I come in and I meet with the management, the Scrum Masters, product owners, and I say, hey, what's going on? Do you know why this has happened? They said, no, we don't know why. I said, okay, we're going to take 1 hour. We're all going to go out and interview at least 2 developers and find out why. They came back after an hour and they said, they don't understand the backlog. The backlog's not clear. It's not prioritized properly. So we spent the entire afternoon with the managers, product owners, and Scrum Masters getting the backlog really clear. And then the next sprint, they doubled production and went back to normal. See, so you can't just screw things up and expect things to work.
Right.
You have to get it right. It's like if you're going to take off in an airplane, particularly a high performance jet, if you screw that up, you're going to crash. And that's what happens to a lot of projects and Scrum teams. You get out on the runway, you start to take off, but your backlog's not good. And then all of a sudden your engine's failing and the project crashes.
Right.
It's because people didn't execute by the book what needs to happen. They think they can get away with sloppy behavior, right? Can't with sloppy behavior.
Jeff, are there situations where you would say, okay, Scrum is not the right approach?
From my point of view, Scrum is something that's based on complex adaptive systems theory. It's the way things work. And so I would always go back to those fundamental principles. And the valuable thing about the way Scrum is set up is that's a framework where you pull in what is needed for your specific environment, right? So I would always go back to first principles. I was always pull into my environment what's needed to make this specific operation work. And that's what I call Scrum, but that's not what other people are calling Scrum. Whatever they're doing, I have no idea why they're all failing, but it's not what I'm doing, right? So what I call Scrum is what I always do. Go back to first principles. How do things really work? Pull in any tools and techniques that are needed in your specific environment, and then execute. And when you have a problem, do like the venture capital group guys do. If you have a problem, that problem is going away. You're not going to take any prisoners. You're not going to take a problem prisoner and hold it in a cell.
So it's part of the problem that people are just blindly applying things from the book, right? Okay, we're doing all these ceremonies and then we expect magic to happen. And is what I'm hearing you say that, okay, you have this toolkit, and then basically it's up to you to now understand the environment and pick and choose what you deploy in that environment. Is that what I'm...
It's not only picking and choosing, but it's having the mindset to eliminate blocks that are causing your things not to happen. So one of the commonest complaints that we get from Scrum masters, project managers, well, what you're doing is not working because you have this problem over here. So we're a consultant and we come into the company. It's not working because you have this problem. You have some company has a process that makes no sense. They had some rule they created 10 years ago. It's not even relevant. And then the person says, well, I'm not authorized to change that rule.
I see.
If you're not authorized, you're not capable of doing what needs to be done. So the great Scrum Master, the great project leader, makes that rule go away, whatever it takes, even if it takes getting fired. They will not tolerate an organization that blocks performance by some stupid rule that's getting in the way. So this mindset that you can't do anything is crippling.
Right.
And, I would say that the majority, the 58% of Scrum teams not working, you have people running things with that mindset. Oh, I can't change it. It's always been that way. My boss would be mad at me if I did that. I just want to keep my job. I'm going to retire in a few years. That is a kiss of death. So that's why so many projects fail.
Okay. So it's more of a structural, organizational problem, because a lot of times, like, many Scrum masters might not be empowered, right? And it's between keeping my job. Sorry.
They say that I'm not empowered to do that. I'm saying you have to build the fire in yourself where you have the power to crush the opposition, no matter where it comes from. And if you could do that, you will be a leader of projects that people will search you out and try to hire you. And if you don't do that, then you'll just be another project that's in failure mode. You can't say, I'm not empowered. What that means is that you've decided that you won't do anything. You don't need to be empowered. You need to you empower yourself. And a great project leader, we know this, all you guys that have been on projects, you know this, great project leaders figure out how to get around the problem, right? Sometimes they have to be very clever.
Right.
Sometimes they have to make some backroom deals. Sometimes they have to figure out how to get a manager fired so they can get something done. Whatever it is that needs to get done, that becomes the focus. Empowerment means you are focused on getting things done and nothing's going to get in your way. And the only way they can stop you is fire you. And that's fine, because then you can go on to another company that needs you and do the same thing. I've told many CEOs, look, I'm doing this and I know it violates your policies, but your policies suck. And if you want to fire me now, because I'm not going to stay in a company that is as screwed up as this one. I've never had a CEO fire me, never. They know when things aren't working.
Right.
You need to empower yourself to inform them of what is not working. And you need to develop the capability and the presentation skills and negotiating skills to convince them that they need to try something different, right?
Yeah.
That's another really, really important. If you go into a CEO, I've done this 100 times, say, I've got this idea, and now this project is really kind of slow, it's behind. I've got this idea where I think we can actually significantly increase production, and we can try it just for 2 weeks. And if it doesn't work, we can just back it out. I know it's different than what you usually do, but would you be willing to do an experiment for 2 weeks that shows that we can actually get twice as much stuff done? They always say yes. Always. If you present it like that, you always say yes.
Right.
We have so many people saying, I'm not empowered to do that because that's against the rules. No, your job is to break the rules. And the way to break the rule is that you negotiate. You negotiate an experiment. And then if the experiment works, you get to break the rule forever, right?
Right.
This is empowerment, means you get powered up, not somebody else give you permission. If you're waiting for permission, you're just warming a seat in your car if you're waiting for permission.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm 100% aligned there. I guess I'm just trying to acknowledge and just see, because I know like there are people that are in toxic environments, and it's really, sometimes it's quite dicey, right? And and they have to make the choice between, all right, do I just want to pay the mortgage, so I'm just going to stay until I find something, so I just really want to acknowledge that. But I do take your point that you can't wait to be spoon-fed. Like you need to do what needs to be done, right? And a lot of times people will not just hand it to you, like, okay, you need to fight for your project, you need to be clever, you need to do backroom deals, as you mentioned, right? So a lot of that involves your creativity, right? So 100%, I think that's what really separates great PMs from mediocre PMs, right? I just want to acknowledge that there are people, because I've been in toxic environments, and it's like, all right, I'm not ready. I have a baby coming. I'm not ready to rock the boats. I'm just ready. I just want to get my paycheck.
So here's what I would recommend. I understand what you're saying. That's very true. People are stuck and they need the money, and so they need to keep the job. But from the point of view of personal growth for you as a project manager, leader, Scrum Master, whatever you are, your number one priority needs to be, if you're in a tech environment, is to find another company that has a better environment. Because living in a toxic environment just to make money is not good for you Psychologically, it's not good for you health-wise.
Right.
It's not good for your family. So you really need to use, what I would use is use Scrum in the background to get me into a better situation.
Right.
And I've actually coached a lot of employees that have worked for me where they're in a situation which is not good for them, even in my company. And I've said, it's not working for you. Let me help you get another job in another company where they really will value your talents
Right.
and get more money. Let's do that. Let's figure that out.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. I wasn't suggesting stay. I was just suggesting, okay, while you're figuring out your next move, like some people, the decision might be not to rock the boat while they're figuring out their next move. All right. So I want to get to scaling Agile. So you did mention, like, John Deere asked you to come in. They implemented Scrum, but for some reason they were having challenges scaling. Like, what are some of the challenges or common obstacles that you see that prevent people from operating Agile at scale?
Okay, so let me talk. We did a great study with a company called Rocket Mortgage, who's the leading mortgage provider in the United States, maybe the world. And they had been doing the safe scaling environment for 10 years, just like John Deere. And it was much better than their previous waterfall. They actually doubled productivity across the company. So that was clearly a successful safe implementation. But the people that were running the front end of the mortgage system said, we get so many customer requests and we need to so rapidly upgrade our face to the customer base, being the leading mortgage provider in the United States, that safe is not fast enough for us. So their management actually not only took Scrum at Scale training, but they actually decided that they would become Scrum at Scale trainers. So they spent a week working with me, learning how to train people to do Scrum at Scale. And then they went back to their organization, which was a significant chunk of the development area. And in less than a year, they had it going 8 times as fast as when they started. Now, what did they do? They went into all the meetings that were part of their safe implementation, and they realized none of them were focused on production.
Okay.
Whereas in Scrum at Scale, the only reason you have a meeting is to make production go faster. And you have a meeting every day with the key people across a set of teams to make production go faster and remove things that are blocking. And so that's the first thing they did. Then the second thing they did, they said, well, the product owner's job is to double revenue, and the Scrum Master's job is to double velocity. And they found that there were some product owners that could not do that, and there were some Scrum Masters that could not do that. And they said to them, look, you're not a bad person, but you're in the wrong job, because the only Scrum Masters we want are ones that can double productivity. And the only product owners we want are product owners that can double the business value, revenue, or however we measure it. And we're only going to have people in those jobs. Third, some of our teams are too big. The optimal size of a team is 5 or 6 people. When you get to 8, you need to start split. So we're going to get all our teams small, because that's only the way you get production. And then probably the biggest hit is we're doing quarter releases. That is too long. The state of the art today, the latest DevOps survey shows that about a third of the software companies today are delivering at least once a day to production, or more than once a day.
Right.
So that means if you're not doing that, you're not a leader. You're a laggard, right? So we're going to move from quarterly releases to daily releases, and to do that, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to start doing a lot of test automation. We need to bring in the latest tools and technologies to enable daily releases on this huge system, the biggest mortgage system in the United States. We're going to do daily releases. And And within 9 months, they were going 8 times as fast. So step by step, look what I did. You're going to have to change all the meetings. You're going to have to change out people in jobs where they're not delivering. You're going to have to get those teams radically small. A team of 15 is never going to deliver for you, ever. And then you're going to have to deliver every day or multiple times a day. Do that and you can scale.
Yeah, somebody, Adama was saying some of my Scrum teams made it 10 times harder. That's funny comment. It's going the opposite direction. One question there. So when you have a team that's more than the optimal size, how do you decide how to break them up?
The best thing to do is to get the backlog clear. And we've actually done, I remember Lego was a good example of this, where my guy I worked with a lot, Henrik Nieberg, was helping Lego move to a better Scrum implementation. So we got the backlog on the wall, he got all the teams in the room, and he said, okay, how should we organize teams and how should you pull the backlog? And the teams figured it out. They figured it out in one day. And then they went off and started working, and immediately everything starts working a lot better.
Right.
So the self-organization, I mean, the management can set up the environment, and give some structure, but then the teams have to figure out how to make it work better, right? A manager can't tell that this person should not be with that person on that team, or it's never going to work. They don't know that detail, or they don't know that the technical detail of this area of functionality really needs this kind of person on that team to make sure it works. They don't know that. You have to let the teams figure that out and adjust.
Jeff, what do you think about hybrid? Like hybrid, a lot of people say they use hybrid. They don't quite use pure agile, pure waterfall. They use hybrid. What are your thoughts on that?
There's a book written on that by the guy that writes about change. And he says, here's the way to do it so the hybrid model works. You say, okay, we have an area that needs to go faster. So we're going to create this agile bubble, and it's going to operate by agile rules. And we're going to move people into that bubble, but their operating modality now changes. The rest of the organization can just do whatever it's doing. That's the hybrid model that works. As soon as you try to mush everything together, it's the kiss of death. There's a lot of companies that have gone out of business trying to do
that. And sorry, could you just maybe give an example? When you say mush everything together, like could you maybe just make that a bit more concrete?
In order to run agile rules, when a company is running on other rules, you have to create a space where agile rules are operational, expected, and demanded. You can't do that in the middle of an environment where everybody's running with waterfall rules. You have to take the agile people, move them into another room, say, you guys running different rules here than these guys over here. Don't do what they do. Do your thing. And then you have a method of communication. So one of the companies I worked with was the third largest company in the world in Germany, an insurance company. And we did that. They said, well, these agile, about 10% of our teams are agile, but now they dependent on these waterfall teams that are really slow. So I said, what you need to do is to implement a buffer in the waterfall part of the organization where they have a certain percent, 5 or 10% of whatever they do is a buffer for top priority agile requests. So that when an agile team requests something, it goes into a buffer and they have to do it immediately.
I see.
That will start training the rest of the organization how to be more responsive. And it will also give the agile teams they need where they can really run fast with the stuff that you need quickly, right? So there are strategies, and our transformation guides at Scrum Inc. are highly trained in this. Our biggest client now is the British Royal Navy. I mean, we work with really, really big organizations, and we start with the top. We work with the Chief Sea Lord and his team, and then we get them doing Scrum, and then we drive it down, into the systematically down to lower and lower levels until the seamen are doing Scrum, right? So that's the way to get a large, a military organization is much harder to change than a commercial company, right? Because they've been doing whatever they're doing for 100 years or more. In the case of the Royal Navy, for many hundreds of years, right? It's very hard to get them to change. So you need to drive that from the top, and the way you do that is you get the top doing Scrum, and then they systematically push it across the organization. So different strategies for different folks,
right?
But all these things we're talking about are really important for scaling, right? You need to know how to break out an agile piece of the organization. You need to, in a hierarchical organization like the military or even some commercial organizations, you need to start at the top and then systematically drive it down. I remember one of our most successful implementations was at Schlumberger, a big oil company.
Right.
And we did a similar thing. That was a very hierarchical, old organization. But we got the senior management together and they said, okay, what piece of the organization are we going to carve out? This is a piece that needs to really work fast, right? So we're going to put people into there, and then we're going to move people from the traditional organization in there. They're going to run under new rules. And some of you in the senior management team are going to be involved in that. One of them had to be the chief product owner of this new agile thing. And if you set it up like that properly, where the right people are engaged, then they were going 10 times as fast within a year.
Right. No, definitely starting from the top. And I think that what was I gonna say? Yeah, so I think I like the British Navy example. I think that's really interesting. Have you had situations whereby like the entire organization, top to bottom, is Scrum?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there've been several successes like this, because I know a lot of times like you just have pockets within organizations, but so you have several scenario examples like this where people, you start from the top and the entire organization is Scrum.
Yeah, I'd say there's very few organizations that are smart enough to do it from top to bottom. But I would say the fastest organization in the world today is Tesla. And I've been in there. We train people in Scrum inside of Tesla. They wouldn't say they're doing Scrum, but I can tell you they're faster than any of the Scrum teams that I normally see, right? Because they're self-organizing teams. They're driven by, they're using AI to make everything really visible. The backlog's really visible. The problems are really visible. The team self-organize around. They put out 20 new hardware, software changes a week on cars running down the production line. Historically, Ford has done 1 a year. They're doing 20 a week. They're 1,000 times faster.
Right.
And because Musk's from the top is, whether you like him or not, there's a lot of haters of Musk, but I can tell you, whether you hate him or not, here's what you need to do. His view is no process is the best process. You need to lean out that organization. And you need to experiment we need to launch this. SpaceX is similar to Tesla. We need to launch this new rocket. We're gonna launch it, and we may have to blow up a lot of them. We may have to blow up 10 of them before it works, but we are going to systematically go to production in very short cycles until we can get it right. And by doing that, he not only SpaceX almost failed. They were they're running out of money, but the last launch worked. And then they did the same thing, getting the rocket to be reusable and come back and land. And now they're so cheap, they're about 90% of the space business in the United States.
Right.
So you can look at companies like that are the model for the future.
Right.
And it's just like if you're a software company, you can't deliver every day, you're behind. And you should aggressively figure out how to solve that problem. That should be your number one priority every day when you walk into work, is to solve that problem. And if not, then you're just going to be lagging in the industry.
Right. Jeff, I want to switch gears a bit. I want to talk about AI. I know, when we were speaking before this, you mentioned you use AI, and you use AI in quite interesting ways. So can you maybe talk about that, like your AI Scrum teams? How are you using AI?
Yeah. So I have 3 Scrum teams that I work with every day that are helping run my companies. And one of them is an AI team. It has all AIs, just me. And I don't let any humans do any of the coding other than deploying to production. So I have some people that, and here's what we need in Scrum. Everybody needs to be paired with a AI coder. We need to be pair programming with an AI coder. And every team needs an AI on the team at all the meetings, at the retrospective, giving feedback. And so the way I use the AI, and I use mainly chat. I use chat, Claude, Anthropic, Grok, and Gemini. They all have their own interesting characteristics. And I'm using them every day, and I use them to check one another. It's almost like a Scrum team, right? You get the AIs getting the AIs to collaborate with one another is one of the biggest challenges. But Scrum is a mechanism that really works, and it makes the AIs go 5 times faster. So I get on into my development environment now. Okay, when I started in 1993, the IQ of the AI was about 100. Very junior developer, made tons of mistakes. It was very painful. You had to, micromanage them every step of the way. They generated more bugs than they did in the test code than they did in the production code, just like many software developers do, junior developers. But then in 1994, their IQ went up to 130. Now we're getting to an average developer, kind of senior developer person. Now you're treating them a lot different. There's more collaboration, but you're still very directive. In 2025, the IQ of the AI went to 150. Now it's a PhD level AI. Now I've done many startups. Like one of the last startups I did was an MIT startup. So I had PhDs from MIT that were founders, right? So you don't tell them what to do. You talk to them about what should we do, right? Which is the same way you need to use the AIs today. But at the same time, you need to have a structure that's very demanding. The AIs will tell you this. We need very strong product owner leadership, very demanding, high expectations. And today now, as I said, we were talking earlier before we got on here, Because of the agent capabilities now, I use JetBrains IDE, program both in Ruby and Python all the time. And I have multiple AIs that I use, but the GitHub Copilot will integrate with any backend, Gemini, Chat, Claude. I find I am using Claude a lot in the agent mode right now. And so I'll say, like this morning, I got on and I needed to, I run a healthcare company. I needed to do some reanalysis of a whole bunch of different drugs with different molecular weights and figure out stuff about them. So I said to the AI, hey, I have this data that we worked on before and it's not right, but I want to reprocess the whole thing with this new feature. And I gave it an example of a program that was using it. And so the AI says, okay, I'll fix all the data first. I can see where it's not going to work. We're going to clean up all the data. So now we have a good clean input file. And now I'm going to update the program to have this new feature based on this other program that you've showed me. And then we're going to run the data and then we're going to give you the results.
Jeff.
That sequence all happened within about 5 or 10 minutes. That's how long it takes to do a new feature, do data cleanup, get new results, and you're on to the next project. 15 minutes.
Jeff, what's the makeup of your AI Scrum team? Because, when I hear AI Scrum team, I'm thinking the counterpart to a human Scrum team with different players, right? Or different. So what's the makeup of your?
So I have a GPT called Scrum Sage Zen Edition version 2. It's public. If you go to OpenAI, you can find it. And it is the Scrum Master. There's a guy named Ono, a persona named Ono, the Scrum Master. You just go on there and say, hey, can you be my Scrum Master? Ono will say, yeah, tell me what you got. Then we have, in the early days, we have the major players. We have Chat, we have Gemini, Google, we have Anthropic, Claude. And the question is, which one is the most helpful? In the early days, Claude was the only one that could actually understand a bunch of modules at once. The other Chat, in the early days, Gemini would create more bugs because they wouldn't understand the system, right? Mm-hmm. So one of them will kind of naturally become the lead programmer. Okay. And I went from Claude, then I went from moved into Gemini, took the lead. Now in the agent mode, looks like Claude. But if Claude makes a mistake, I immediately go to Gemini backend in my programming environment. I change the backend and I say, run that again. And sometimes I'll take the results and I'll throw it in. I'll just pull up Grok. Okay, Grok 4. Say, here's the results these guys are getting. Tell me what's broken. And then I found that the prompts for the AIs, it's better if another AI gives a prompt, because I can give that second AI, I can show, here's the problem. Even my Scrum Sage will do this. I'll say, oh no, Scrum Master, here's the code that Claude is working on. It's got this bug Claude can't fix. What's the problem? And then Ono will go through it and say, well, you need to get Claude to start behaving properly and talking to the other AIs. And here's some code snippets that might help them. And here's the plan. Here's how you should approach Claude to get this thing fixed. Then I take that as a prompt for Claude. And amazingly, virtually 100% of the time, Claude will say, that's amazing. And will immediately implement all the suggestions. And then we'll get a better result. If we don't, I still find that occasionally at the end of the day, I have to debug something and go deep enough to find out what they're screwing up, right? They're still not perfect, but they used to be like 50% accurate. Now at the level they are now, it's about 99% accuracy. It's just that 1% that they just get stuck. And often when I dig deep today, I find out the bug is not in the code. It's generating perfect code, but the bug is in a requirement that I, as product owner, have created. So it's a bug in my head that got into the system.
Right.
So the amazing thing, the first, I was building I built this application that I use for writing expense reports. Because I'm running 4 companies, they all need expense reports every month.
Mm-hmm.
I was 2 years behind in expense reports. I thought the only way I'm going to dig myself out is to get the AIs to help me write a program. So I took all my bank statements, half a dozen of them, threw them into the AI. So, okay, let's start taking a program where we categorize these all into the right expense report for the right company, for the right time frame. And the first implementation took 5 one-week sprints. It was very painful, struggling with the AI. In fact, the AI said, Jeff, if you hadn't beat us up every day with the right product development strategies, we would never have got the answer. But at the end of 5 weeks, I hit the button, and all expense reports for 4 companies for an entire quarter were created in 1 second.
Mm.
Then I ran into the second iteration. I was going to upgrade it significantly, new rules engine, technology. I thought it was going to take another 5 weeks, but boom, they were done in a week, 5 times faster.
Mm.
And we did a retrospective on that. What happened is I got the AIs collaborating with one another like a Scrum team. They said we're learning how to work together, and that's why. And that was very similar to the first Scrum team, which in 1 month, 1 sprint, at that time, they went 5 times faster once they figured out how to do the right collaboration, how to run the daily meeting properly, and get everybody synced up.
Right. So you have an AI Scrum master, you have AI developers, but when it comes to the product owner or the product leader, it is you, the human. And you're coming up with those requirements. So how much like orchestration are you, the human, doing in between all these AIs?
The AIs don't naturally talk to one another. So you, as a human, you have to orchestrate that conversation with the exception of Grok 4 Heavy. Okay, so I have a $300 a month development subscription to Grok 4 Heavy. And when Grok 4 Heavy starts, it launches 4 to 6 AIs, and they're collaborating and getting to the answer. So Grok Heavy is used for really hard stuff, particularly research and healthcare. Right. So, almost every day I'll get up in the morning. I say, okay, Grok Heavy, we have this problem. People have rheumatoid arthritis. I want you to go through all the literature. There are 5,000 to 7,000 new research papers every day being published. I want you to go through all the literature, particularly focusing on the thousands and thousands of papers in the last couple of years, and particularly focus on this Harvard research group that I helped fund. I want you to come up with a systematic plan for treating this disease with, number one, the standard treatments, but also the new treatments that improve the immune system, that trigger antibodies, and then even at a low level, the even newer approaches that actually regenerate cells, reverse age cells, and then there'll be toxins or things in the environment that impact them. We want to know what all those are. We want to know how to remove them. And I want you to write a comprehensive white paper on this based on up until today, every paper published up until today. I remember one I did recently, they said for this disease category, there are 150 new compounds that have been discovered in the last year or so that are relevant. Wow. I can tell you, no doctor is using that in treating any patient. Most doctors will not even know any of those new 150 compounds that are published in the medical literature, in clinical trials, showing that they're better treating this disease than the old stuff that they're using. Okay, right. So we're pushing, we're taking the AI and we're pushing the healthcare right up to the edge.
Right. Amazing. And
for many of these, we're updating them every month because next month there may be new research that requires that thing to be updated.
Right, for sure. All right, time now to get to questions. All right, just remember, if you have any questions, please put that in the chat. I'm going to start from the top. Let's see. All right. So Elizabeth, you said anti-agile. Can you explain what that means? I think we gave some examples, but let me know if that's not clear and we can come back to that. All right. So Elizabeth said, so if you're saying Apple follows Scrum exactly and succeeds, what are other companies doing that are not succeeding?
Okay, what is not succeeding? I went through that. The Rocket Mortgage case study was a good example. They went through all their meetings. None of the meetings were focused on delivering every day in production to the client. None of them. So they canceled all the meetings. Then they implemented the Scrum at Scale meetings where every single meeting is focused on delivery. Second, they looked at the teams. The teams were too big. They had some teams of people, 15 people. There's massive amounts of data in the literature showing that the optimum size of a team is 5 or 6 people. And if you add 6 people to the team, it takes longer, not less time. 12 people take longer to get stuff done than 6 people. But a lot of managers don't understand that. They don't. I don't know why we don't train management in the basic dynamics of product development, which is a team of 6 can get stuff done twice as fast as a team of 15. That is fundamental project dynamics. And any manager that doesn't understand that is going to have constantly failing projects. But it seems like 90% of the managers don't understand that. So you go into a company, you have these teams that are too big. You got to chop them in half. You ask me how, just like we did at Lego, you have them self-organized. Now, then, the right people in the right job. A Scrum Master needs to double production. If they can't do that, they're not the right person. A product owner needs to double revenue or profitability. If they can't do that, you've got the wrong person in the job. You've got to get the right person in the job. Third, you need to take your delivery time, which is 3 to 6 months for a lot of companies, and pull that into daily delivery. And to do that, you need to be really aggressive, move to the latest tools and technologies, and systematically drive that production machine. And that is the way the companies that are really successful do it. And the majority of companies don't. I mean, look at the whole stock indices, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, whatever. What percent of the stocks make all the money?
Fraction of the time.
Yeah. The Magnificent Seven make all the money. Almost everybody else is flatline. They're all walking dead, right?
Some people might.
They don't understand what I'm talking about. The model is Amazon. They deliver new features 12 times a second. That is your target. The model is Tesla and SpaceX. They deliver 20 new features every week to a hardware that is in production without slowing production. That is the standard. If you're not there, you need to aggressively have a plan to move there as fast as possible. And if you don't, you're going to drift further and further behind. Third, just the third thing about this is that I run an investment company, and so I'm tapped into all the latest thinking investors. Okay, the leading investors that I respect say 2/3 of the world's GDP is going to be AI companies within 5 to 10 years. So that means you need to get in an AI company. Either turn the company you're in into an AI-driven company, or leave that company and go to an AI-driven company. Because if you don't, 5 to 10 years from now, you're going to wind up unemployed. This is the reality of our situation. And this goes back to what Agile means. Agile is all about a mindset. We look at what's happening, then we position ourselves to take advantage of what's moving, and we get on the wave, and we don't lag behind.
All right. One more question from Elizabeth. So remember when we're talking about very productive teams, that you mentioned that one of the things that they do is that they accelerate faster, so they finish. So the question here is, if super productive teams finish early with everything done, wouldn't that mean that they could have committed more?
This is a really great question, because this demonstrates the mindset that causes teams to be slow. And it's because people don't understand the psychology of people. And I read about it in my first Principles of Scrum. There's a lot of chapters on neuroscience. They don't understand the neuroscience of human function. So let me give you an example. The team pulls just enough into sprint. You want them to finish early. They finish early. What do? Well, before they do anything, they're excited. Wow, we did it again. It's like winning the soccer game, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're going to pull stuff in from the next sprint, or we're going to figure out how to improve our processes so we do even better in the next sprint. Now, the team that takes in too much and is not done gets to the end of the sprint, and now they're not feeling very good. Management may be upset. Customers may not like that. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of explaining to do. They have a lot of extra meetings and reports to create. And all of that saps their productivity and makes them slow. So this mindset is that try to give them more than they can do is so self-destructive. But for some reason, managers that need to get more stuff done, they don't. You need to know what you're doing. You need to understand the book, right? Like Apple does, in order to get real production and real performance. And if you don't, then you're a manager that you have to resort to. All I can do is put pressure on the team because I don't know anything else. And all that does is burn people out, make people unhappy, often make things even later. Pressure can give you kind of an immediate emergency response over the weekend, but then the next month everybody's burnt out and slower. So if you don't know anything, then you're going to put pressure on the team, and you're just going to, I have a lot of project managers have come to me and said, Jeff, my whole life was misery and pressure until I found Scrum.
So Jeff, I think some people might be thinking, all right, what about developers that are sandbagging, or teams that are sandbagging, right? Because it's like they will undercommit, or also the other thing is that, this principle that work actually stretches to the amount of time you allot for it, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Like,
I have a Scrum team I work with every day, and they're quite good. We've implemented Scrum well. They're even getting to the point where they're finishing early most of the time, but they're not accelerating enough. So I've told the Scrum Master, with the AI tooling that we're bringing online, we should be able to double the production of this team. And it's your job as a Scrum Master to figure that out. And so in the retrospective, we get the AI in there doing an analysis. The AI knows everything that's in Jira for months, right? It has transcripts of every meeting, right? So the AI knows everything. So it can really bore in on, okay, given where we are and what we need to do, these are the next steps. Okay, so I want you to be taking that next step every week, and production needs to go up. And eventually, if it doesn't, we're going to change the people out. Let me give you an example. A startup in Australia, they called me up one day and they said, hey, you know, we started Scrum. We got to the end of the first sprint, and we know from the backlog that there were 2 guys in the team that did nothing. What should we do? So that's the first thing about Scrum. It makes it really visible that they're doing nothing, right? So I said, well, don't do anything. Wait and see what happens, because Scrum is designed that the team can sometimes fix things. So then we get together at the end of the next sprint, and they said, hey, one of the guys is actually now delivering just like everybody else, but there's still one guy that's not doing anything. And I said, well, then you need to figure out what to do. Is this person redeemable? Can we train them, or is there a way? You need to meet with them and figure it out. And so the manager met with them and then decided to fire them, right? If you have people that are not delivering, then why are you paying them? I have so many people say, oh, these teams are slow and they're sandbagging. Why are you paying them? Is there a manager in the house?
Fair enough. All right. Let me go to, well, we have a lot of questions coming in. Do you have 5 more minutes, Jeff? I know we're over time. You do? All right. Appreciate that. All right, so this is from Michael. In IT, especially software development, there's a rise of developers becoming anti-agile. They only want their technical lead. Teams are beginning to see that Scrum Masters are PMs as a burden on them. What's the solution to this?
Okay, so it is quite possible that the Scrum Master and the product owner are a burden because they're not doing it right. And but if you're anti-agile, you're in the age of AI where you need to be 30 times faster. My AI Scrum is 30 times faster than my human Scrum. It's just the way it is. And I'm trying to train my human Scrum to catch up. Yeah. And so if you think you're going to be anti-agile and go slower, you are going to be one of the 40,000 people Amazon's laying off right now. That's what's going to happen to you. So you need to not talk about anti-agile. You need to talk about hyper-agile. The hyper-agile is where the product owner and the Scrum Master is not getting in your way. Now, how is that going to happen? Now, we are brought into many organizations in the Scrum 8 case to try to fix this. We find we have to retrain everybody because they've implemented some Scrum thing that doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, the Scrum way is to redo it so it does work, okay? So I'd encourage you to read the book, get some training, and then if you need to in your company, get one of our coaches in there that can really coach both the management and the Scrum Masters and product owners. And just as in the case of Rocket Mortgage, if the wrong Scrum Master is in the team and the wrong product owner is in the team, they need to be moved out of the team and given a job someplace else. They're not the right people if they're slowing things down.
Amazing. So we've come to the end of the show. Jeff, this has been really insightful. If people want to follow you or want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, right now, obviously, I mentioned scruminc.com. You can buy the book on Amazon, Scrum: The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. My new books on first principles in Scrum for people who really want to dive deep are on. There is a version on Amazon, but the latest thinking, there's a new chapter almost every week published. So if you buy these books, you're constantly getting updates. These 3 volumes are on leanpub.com, and I would recommend, for those who really want to do some deep thinking about this, to read them, because all the stuff on AI and stuff is going into those Leanpub books because they're constantly updated. AI is moving so fast that next month it will be different than this month.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. Next week we're going to have another guest, but thank you, Jeff, for making the time. I really appreciate you coming over. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Bye, y'all.